Kari Lake stands at the podium, her face flushed with fury, the tension in the room palpable. Her words cut through the air like a razor. "Get out," she screams, her voice echoing across the hall. The audience freezes, stunned. The camera cuts to the faces in the crowd, some in disbelief, others wide-eyed with shock. The words hang in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Jasmine Crockett stands across from her, unflinching. Calm. Unyielding. The room falls into an eerie silence. Kari's eyes are burning with anger, her body tense with the weight of her emotions. "You don't belong here," she spits, her voice sharp, trembling with rage. "Not in my America." But Jasmine doesn't budge. She doesn't even flinch. The camera cuts to the past, quick flashes of the escalating tensions between the two women. Kari Lake, storming into the national spotlight, making headlines with her defiant stance against the establishment. The press conferences. The bold accusations. Her speeches, filled with fiery words, igniting the passions of her followers. And then there's Jasmine Crockett, the voice of reason in a room full of noise. Her measured words. Her calm in the storm. The quiet strength of a woman who's seen the world tear itself apart and has vowed to fight for something better. The flashes grow faster, an argument, a fiery debate, each one more intense than the last. The present moment crashes back in, a single shot of Kari Lake's face twisted in contempt as she yells again, "Get out." The camera slowly pans to Jasmine, who stands there, her gaze unwavering. The audience holds its breath, waiting for her to speak. The tension builds. The room holds its collective breath. But what happens next left America speechless. The political climate is boiling over. In a country divided by sharp ideological lines, tensions have reached a boiling point. Kari Lake, a former journalist turned political firebrand, has become the embodiment of an outspoken rebellion against the status quo. She's not just a politician, she's a disruptor, a voice for those who feel unheard, disillusioned with a system they believe has long been broken. Her rallies have become arenas of fiery rhetoric, where the crowd hangs on every word, cheering as she tears into the establishment, the media, and anyone who dares to challenge her. Kari speaks in absolutes, her beliefs are bold, uncompromising. She has built her political identity on defiance and contempt for the traditional political elite, drawing a clear line between us and them. But it's more than just her words. It's her power to stir the emotions of a nation, to make people feel that their frustrations are justified. For many of her supporters, she represents the fierce anger of the underdog fighting back against a system they believe has abandoned them. And for those who disagree, she represents a growing threat to the ideals of democracy itself. Enter Jasmine Crockett. She doesn't shout or posture. She doesn't need to. Instead, she listens, speaks calmly, and cuts through the noise with logic and empathy. A rising star in the political arena, Jasmine has become the voice of reason in a world gone mad. She's not about inflaming passions or throwing stones, she's about finding common ground, fighting for justice, and ensuring that every person, regardless of background, has a voice in shaping the future of this nation. Jasmine's steady rise to prominence has come with its own set of challenges. She's faced constant opposition, not just from the right, but from all sides. Her policies are seen by some as too progressive, too idealistic, while others accuse her of not doing enough. But Jasmine knows that compromise is the only way forward in a fractured nation. She's come to embody the very ideals that Kari Lake so fiercely opposes: justice, equality, respect for all. And yet, in a moment of overwhelming pressure, in a room filled with charged emotions, the two figures are about to collide. Kari Lake's frustration with the political system, her anger at what she perceives as years of betrayal, has reached a breaking point. Every debate, every speech, every rally has been a stepping stone toward this very confrontation. The message is clear: the system must be torn down, and if that means challenging every established institution, so be it. Jasmine Crockett, on the other hand, has never been more resolute. Her path has always been one of unity, of fighting for the disenfranchised while maintaining a belief in the rule of law. But the personal attacks, the vitriol spewed in her direction, the divisiveness, this moment has tested her like no other. Yet, she stands firm, her resolve unwavering. As the two figures prepare to clash, the stakes couldn't be higher. This isn't just a battle between two politicians, it's a fight for the soul of the nation. On one side, you have the forces of division, anger, and vengeance. On the other, a woman whose very presence represents hope, unity, and the ideals of democracy. This verbal battle is about more than just words, it's about defining what kind of nation America will be. It's about who will shape the future and whether the nation's values will be decided by fear and rage or by respect, understanding, and the pursuit of justice for all. The tension in the room is palpable, but it's more than just a contest between two voices. It's a moment that will determine the future of American democracy, the values the nation will hold dear, and the direction of its political future. What happens next changes the fate of the nation. Kari Lake's rise to political prominence wasn't an accident. It was a calculated decision, a choice to channel the frustration of millions into a force that would demand attention. Born in the heart of the American Midwest, she learned early on that power wasn't handed to you, it was taken. Throughout her career, she fought to be heard, and when her time came to stand at the center of the national stage, she didn't hesitate. A former news anchor, Lake's name was once synonymous with credibility. Her polished persona, the calm authority with which she delivered the daily news, made her a trusted face in homes across America. But beneath the surface, something was brewing. The very media she worked for, controlled by corporate interests, dictated by political agendas, began to feel like a cage. She started to feel the walls closing in, her sense of truth and justice drowning beneath a sea of narratives that didn't match her own vision of the world. By the time she made the decision to leave her high-profile news job, Lake had already become disillusioned with the system she had once served. Her exit from journalism wasn't just a career change, it was a public declaration of defiance. Lake began speaking out about the media's role in shaping public perception, accusing her former industry of being nothing more than a tool for the elites. She turned her back on the very profession that had made her a household name, choosing instead to embrace the chaos of a new frontier, politics. In the early days of her political career, Lake built her persona on a foundation of defiance. She wasn't interested in compromise or consensus, those were the tools of a broken system. To her, the establishment had failed the American people. The elites had manipulated the masses, and it was time for a reckoning. Every rally she held, every speech she gave, was a battle cry against the forces she believed were destroying the country. She wasn't just running for office, she was leading a revolution. Her supporters adored her for this unrelenting stance. They saw her as a voice for the voiceless, the underdog who wasn't afraid to call out corruption. Lake's ability to whip crowds into a frenzy was unparalleled. When she spoke, the air seemed to crackle with energy. The more divisive her words, the louder the applause. And Lake fed off that energy, reveling in the validation it gave her. She knew exactly how to wield her newfound power, stoking the flames of anger and frustration until they blazed uncontrollably. But Lake's uncompromising nature was also her greatest flaw. Her refusal to listen, to even entertain the possibility of another perspective, alienated her from those who might have been her allies. She was a political hurricane, unstoppable, unpredictable, and destructive. The rhetoric she used, while galvanizing for her base, was polarizing for everyone else. She painted the world in stark black and white terms, labeling anyone who didn't agree with her as the enemy. And it worked, at first. Behind the bravado, however, lay a woman who had learned the hard way that the political world was far more complicated than she'd imagined. Every victory on the campaign trail brought new challenges, and each new challenge made her question the very ideology she had built her career on. Lake had become the voice of a movement that was growing in strength but was also deeply fractured. What had started as a fight for justice had morphed into something darker, an obsession with vengeance, a hunger for power that could not be sated. Her enemies, both in the political world and the media, were quick to seize on her contradictions. On one hand, Lake presented herself as a champion of truth, a defender of justice. But on the other, her methods were anything but just. She was known for using sensationalist rhetoric that often blurred the line between truth and manipulation. Her campaign ads were full of half-truths, insinuations, and misleading claims. She painted a picture of America that was constantly under siege, a nation whose very existence was threatened by forces both foreign and domestic. Her willingness to challenge the system had won her support from a vocal minority, but it had also earned her the disdain of political moderates, journalists, and even fellow conservatives who felt her tactics were too extreme. The more she doubled down on her rhetoric, the more isolated she became from the very people she needed to build a successful coalition. In this heated political landscape, Lake's brashness had also made her vulnerable. Her inability to adapt, to soften her tone or engage in constructive dialogue, left her ill-prepared for the type of intellectual battles that Jasmine Crockett represented. Crockett's calm demeanor and logical arguments stood in stark contrast to Lake's bombastic, reactionary style. For all her fire, Kari Lake had created a world where nuance and compromise were the enemy. In a confrontation with someone who embodied the very principles she had rejected, like Crockett, Lake was out of her depth. The world she had built, a world where shouting louder than everyone else was the key to victory, was about to collapse around her. Lake's arrogance had brought her to this moment, but it would also be her undoing. As the tension in the room builds, one thing becomes clear: Kari Lake's unrelenting quest to tear down the system had left her exposed. The bravado that had earned her a loyal following was about to clash with the calm, methodical approach of someone who understood that justice wasn't just about winning, it was about truth. Jasmine Crockett never thought she'd be a politician. She grew up in a working-class neighborhood, where families struggled to make ends meet. Her mother worked 2 jobs to provide for her, her siblings, and herself, while her father, a high school teacher, spent his evenings tutoring students in their modest home. Despite their hard work, they never felt the warmth of financial stability, but they had something far more powerful: a sense of community, a commitment to justice, and a fierce belief that people, no matter their background, deserved a voice. Those early years were shaped by the kind of hardship that builds resilience in people. Jasmine's experiences shaped her beliefs in ways that would never let her settle for easy answers. She didn't learn to fight just to win, but to build a world that was just, where people weren't left behind. From the moment she was old enough to understand politics, she saw the systemic inequalities that permeated every facet of life: education, healthcare, even the air people breathed, and she knew she couldn't stand by while others suffered. It wasn't until her college years, studying political science, that Jasmine fully understood how deep the inequities went. She worked tirelessly on campaigns, advocating for social justice, fair housing, and police reform. She spoke at rallies, participated in protests, and interned for state representatives who truly believed in creating change from the ground up. But it wasn't the media frenzy or political headlines that attracted her, it was the people, the communities, the voices that were so often drowned out. In those voices, she found purpose. Her first taste of real political power came when she ran for office at the state level. She was an underdog, young, black, and without the kind of financial backing that most candidates had. But she had something far more powerful: authenticity. The campaign trail was grueling. She knocked on doors, attended town halls, and sat down for hours with constituents who didn't know her but knew they were tired of empty promises. She listened, truly listened, to their stories, stories of job losses, broken promises, and fear for the future. Her victory was hard-earned, but when it came, it was a testament to the kind of leader she had become, a leader who didn't just speak for the people but with them. She wasn't interested in the typical political game. She didn't care for sound bites or popularity contests. What mattered to her was that every policy she backed reflected the needs of the people she served. The real people, not the ones with influence or money, but the ones who were struggling every day to hold on to hope. It wasn't long before Jasmine's reputation grew beyond her local district. She became known as a fearless advocate for marginalized communities, a voice of reason in an often chaotic and polarized environment. In every debate, she demonstrated her ability to stay calm, even when faced with the loudest, most disruptive voices. While others shouted, Jasmine spoke with clarity and conviction. While her opponents tried to tear down their rivals, Jasmine built up her ideas, one fact, one argument, one compassionate word at a time. Her calmness in the face of chaos was striking. Where others stumbled over their words, lost in the moment, Jasmine remained unshaken. She understood that emotion was powerful, but so was reason. So was truth. Her approach was simple: to address problems with solutions, to listen before speaking, and to lead with the understanding that everyone deserved to be treated with dignity. It was this approach that set her apart from the likes of Kari Lake. While Lake thrived on chaos and conflict, Jasmine thrived on clarity and unity. The more Lake shouted and riled up crowds with divisive rhetoric, the more Jasmine quietly cultivated a base of people who wanted real change, not just headlines. The more Lake tore down institutions, the more Jasmine worked to build up the people who were affected by those very systems, those who had been left behind by the system's failure. But Jasmine's rise wasn't without sacrifice. In fact, it came at a steep personal cost. Her family, who had supported her every step of the way, had been subjected to unrelenting attacks. Her opponents dug into her past, questioning her integrity, calling her naive and out of touch. Her work in communities of color became a target for those who believed she was pandering to a demographic. In public forums, she was often accused of being too idealistic, her beliefs dismissed as soft or impractical. And yet, she never faltered. She couldn't. For every personal attack, every setback, every public moment where the world questioned her right to be in the room, she only grew stronger. It was the people she served, the voices she championed, that kept her grounded. They were the reason she fought, and they were the reason she would keep fighting, no matter what. Jasmine's past, marked by struggle, resilience, and unwavering commitment to justice, had prepared her for this moment. She wasn't just a politician, she was a reflection of everything she had fought for, the embodiment of the values that mattered to so many. In a world where the loudest voices often drowned out the most important messages, Jasmine had learned to stand firm. To remain unshaken. To speak with conviction and lead with heart. And now, as she faced off against Kari Lake, a woman who had spent years stoking division and anger, Jasmine knew one thing with certainty: her experience, her calm, and her belief in truth and justice had prepared her for this battle. Kari Lake might have the crowd, the fire, and the passion, but Jasmine had something more powerful: the clarity of purpose and the strength to bring people together. She wasn't just here to win a debate. She was here to show the country what real leadership looked like. The room, already charged with tension, feels like it's on the edge of something explosive. The exchange of words between Kari Lake and Jasmine Crockett has shifted from ideological jabs to a more personal, heated confrontation. The crowd can feel it: every word, every gesture, is filled with raw emotion. It's no longer just a debate, it's a battle for pride, for legacy, for the very future of America. Kari Lake stands up from her podium, her fists clenched, her eyes fixed on Crockett with barely contained rage. "You think you can come in here with your shiny rhetoric, your fancy speeches, and pretend like you have all the answers?" Lake spits, the words dripping with disdain. "I'm here fighting for real Americans. The ones who are tired of being lied to by the elites. You." She sneers, turning to the crowd. "You're just another puppet for the establishment, pretending to care." The audience is divided. Some cheer, clapping and chanting Lake's name, while others are visibly uncomfortable with the venomous tone in the room. The tension builds, a thick cloud hanging in the air. But Jasmine Crockett doesn't flinch. She doesn't even move. She stands, steady, her hands clasped in front of her, her voice calm but unwavering. "Kari, it's not about who's fighting for real Americans. It's about what kind of America we want to build. You talk about tearing down the system, but you're not offering a solution. You're offering chaos. You're offering division. And that's not what this country needs right now." The sharp contrast between them is undeniable. Kari's words come fast and furious, filled with anger and passion. But Jasmine's response is deliberate, measured, and focused. She doesn't allow herself to be dragged into the mud. Instead, she rises above, speaking with a calm authority that only amplifies the power of her words. Lake's frustration is palpable. "You think you're so much better than me, don't you?" she spits, her voice rising. "You're all about unity, but you've done nothing but let the system fail while you sit up there in your ivory tower pretending to have all the answers. You and your fancy policies, do you really think they'll change anything? Or are you just another voice telling people what they want to hear, not what they need to know?" The crowd shifts again, some nodding in agreement with Lake's words, others becoming more uncertain. It's clear that the debate has reached a boiling point. The lines are drawn, one side pushing for a complete overhaul, the other for measured, thoughtful reform. Jasmine doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. "I don't claim to have all the answers, Kari. But I know one thing. I know that tearing down our institutions and demonizing anyone who disagrees with you won't fix this country. We need to rebuild, not destroy. We need to listen, not shout. And we need to come together, whether you like it or not." The words land like a punch, but she doesn't let up. "You want to talk about the system failing? Look around, Kari. The system is broken because of people like you who've spent years feeding the flames of division. The only thing you're doing is winning votes by playing on people's fears. But what are you actually offering? Anarchy?" Lake's face flushes with fury. "Anarchy?" she repeats, almost laughing, though it's more of a sneer than amusement. "You think that's what this is? You think I'm calling for chaos? I'm calling for freedom. For people to have a say in what happens to their lives. Not to be told what to do by people who have no idea what it's like to actually struggle. You've been in your cushy political seat for far too long, Jasmine, and you've done nothing but uphold the very system that's keeping the rest of us down." Jasmine's gaze hardens, but her voice remains as steady as ever. "I've fought for every single person I represent, Kari. Every person who's had their voice stolen by the powerful. But it's not about me, and it's not about you. It's about what we can do for those who need us to listen and to lead with integrity. I'll never claim to be perfect, but I know I'm not here to tear this country apart." The crowd's reaction is divided but growing louder. Some cheer Crockett's calm, logical rebuttals, drawn to her restraint. They see in her words a vision of hope and healing. Others, caught up in the passion and fire of Lake's rhetoric, continue to shout in approval, rallying behind her charge. But the battle isn't over. The insults have escalated. The stakes have grown higher. Both candidates are digging in, each one trying to land the decisive blow. Lake's volatility is in full display, her voice sharp and cutting, while Jasmine's poise is her greatest weapon, her ability to maintain control, to rise above the fray, to be the calm in the storm. And yet, as the insults fly, the question hangs in the air: which approach will resonate with America? Will it be the fiery rhetoric that promises change at any cost? Or the steady resolve that calls for unity and a more thoughtful path forward? The room feels electric. The crowd is holding its breath, watching the showdown unfold. The tension in the room is almost unbearable. Every eye is on the stage, every ear straining to hear the next word, the next retort. Kari Lake stands, seething with anger, the words still hanging in the air from her last outburst. The crowd's reaction is split, some cheer, others remain silent, waiting for something more, something decisive. Jasmine Crockett's eyes lock with Lake's, but instead of rushing in with another rebuttal, she takes a slow, deliberate breath. The audience senses the shift in the air, a pause that feels like an eternity. Lake paces, her hands flailing as she mutters under her breath, trying to hold on to the narrative she's built. "You don't get it, do you, Crockett? You talk about healing, about unity, but you're just a part of the problem. You're part of the system. The one that's failed the American people. You're a puppet. You sit up there, pretending like you care, but when it comes down to it, you've done nothing but protect the establishment. This country doesn't need more of that. It needs real change. Lake's voice rises, the aggression returning. Her words slice through the room, attempting to keep control of the narrative. But Crockett stays calm, unflinching. Her hand gently rests on the podium, the only movement betraying the controlled intensity that radiates from her. She allows a moment of silence to pass, letting Lake's venomous accusations linger. The audience grows restless, sensing something big is coming, a final word that could tip the scales. Then, slowly, Jasmine speaks. Her voice is steady, almost soothing, but there's a weight behind it that quiets the room immediately. Kari, she pauses, letting her name settle in the air. I've heard your words, loud, angry, and filled with accusations. But what I haven't heard is the truth. You want real change. You want to tear down the system. Fine. But tell me, what's your solution? You say I'm part of the system, that I'm complicit in the failure of this country. But what I'm offering isn't the system, it's a new way forward. And you're so caught up in rage that you're blinded to the simple truth. Jasmine steps forward, her voice growing stronger with every word, each sentence crafted with precision. The crowd leans in, sensing a shift, a moment of reckoning. You stand here, talking about the failures of the system. You're right, there's corruption, there's inequality, there's injustice. But what you won't acknowledge is that you're offering no answers. You're not fighting for solutions. You're fighting for chaos. You're using anger to manipulate people, not elevate them. And it's a dangerous game you're playing. She pauses, letting the weight of her words settle before continuing. People are angry. I get it. I understand that frustration. But instead of focusing on tearing down everything, why not focus on building up what we can fix? You want to be the voice for the forgotten, for the disenfranchised, but all you're doing is selling them a dream of destruction. You're telling them they're victims, and you're giving them nothing but more destruction. A revolution without a plan is not a revolution, it's anarchy. The room falls silent, all eyes fixed on Crockett. There's a palpable shift in the air. She's not just challenging Lake's words, she's dismantling them, brick by brick, exposing the cracks in Lake's logic. You keep talking about the elites, the establishment, the system, Jasmine continues, her voice unwavering, her eyes locked on Kari with a calm but fierce intensity. But the truth is, Kari, you're not offering an alternative to that system. You're just offering more noise. You want to tear down the house without ever proposing how to rebuild it. The people who are suffering. They need a plan, not a rant. Crockett takes a step closer to Lake, her confidence radiating from her. The crowd is on edge, sensing that the conclusion is near. They wait, breathless, as Jasmine delivers the final blow. You're playing a dangerous game, Kari. You're using people's fear, their anger, their pain, to fuel your own ambitions. You don't care about the people you claim to fight for, you care about your own power. And when the dust settles, when the chaos you've incited finally calms, you'll be left standing alone. You won't have the people. You'll have only the wreckage you've caused. Jasmine's words are slow but deliberate, each one landing with the force of truth. The audience is stunned, some in shock, others in admiration. For the first time in the entire debate, Kari Lake is visibly rattled. Her face flushes with a mix of anger and embarrassment, her mouth opening as if to respond, but no words come out. She glares at Crockett, but the damage is done. Jasmine doesn't let the silence linger too long. She adds, softly but powerfully, and that's where you've failed, Kari. You've turned your anger into a weapon, but you've forgotten the most important thing: change doesn't come from anger. It comes from understanding. It comes from compassion. It comes from building bridges, not burning them. The room, which had been divided moments earlier, now feels unified in its astonished silence. Jasmine has done it, she's exposed the flaws in Lake's rhetoric, torn apart the foundation of her argument with a calm and measured counterattack. Lake, her confidence shattered, stands frozen. Her once fiery demeanor now looks like a person who's realized they've miscalculated, a person who has lost their footing in the face of someone who is, at her core, unshakable. The silence is broken by a slow, but growing applause. Some of the crowd, initially loyal to Lake, are now clapping in cautious agreement. Others cheer loudly, drawn to Crockett's grace and intellect. It's clear, Jasmine has won this moment. Kari Lake's expression falters, her composure cracking for the first time. She looks around, as if seeking validation, but the room has already turned its gaze. Jasmine Crockett stands tall, her poise and confidence now undeniable. The moment Jasmine Crockett dismantled Kari Lake's argument reverberated across the nation in real time. What had started as a political debate turned into something far more significant. By the time the evening news aired, the confrontation had become the top trending story on every social media platform. It was impossible to escape. Twitter erupted with hashtags, hashtag Crockett crushes Lake, hashtag mic drop moment, and hashtag justice in action, spreading like wildfire. Thousands of tweets flooded in, each one echoing the same sentiment: Jasmine Crockett had won, not just the debate, but the moral high ground. Memes flooded the internet, turning Crockett's calm demeanor and devastating counterattack into a viral sensation. One meme showed her standing poised with the caption, "When you've got facts, grace, and dignity, and you still destroy your opponent." The images of Lake's rattled expression, frozen in disbelief, quickly became the punchline of countless jokes. But it wasn't just Twitter. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the platforms were ablaze with discussions. On TikTok, clips of the debate hit millions of views within hours, with users posting their own reactions, breaking down the debate point by point. Commentators and influencers quickly jumped in, creating reaction videos, analyzing every nuance of Crockett's poised victory over Lake's fiery aggression. Hashtag Crockett crushes Lake quickly became a badge of honor for those who admired Crockett's approach to politics: calm, collected, and thoughtful. People from all walks of life, young, old, from all political backgrounds, shared the clip. Crockett wasn't just a politician, she had become a symbol of hope and reason, a stark contrast to the divisiveness that had plagued American politics for years. However, the fallout was not as one-sided as the memes and hashtags might suggest. Kari Lake supporters, who had been roaring in approval just moments earlier, began to rally behind their candidate with newfound vigor. Lake, though visibly shaken in the moment, wasn't about to go down quietly. By the next morning, she posted a response video to her social media platforms, her voice dripping with indignation. "You think that was a victory?" Lake said, looking directly into the camera. "That was an attempt to silence people like me. People who are tired of the lies, tired of the political elite telling us what to think and how to live." Jasmine Crockett may have had a clever comeback, but she doesn't have the guts to make the tough calls. What you saw last night was a battle between a leader who is fighting for real change and someone who wants to keep the system in place. Her followers were quick to amplify her message. Conservative media outlets took to the airwaves, defending Lake's stance. Fox News, Newsmax, and The Blaze all posted segments dissecting the debate, framing it as a win for Lake. Jasmine Crockett may have delivered a speech, but Kari Lake delivered the truth, they argued. Crockett's approach is nothing more than pacifying rhetoric, while Lake is the fighter we need. The debate quickly moved beyond social media and into the larger political discourse. Major TV networks covered the fallout non-stop. On CNN, commentators spent hours discussing the implications of the debate, with some praising Crockett for her poise and others criticizing Lake for her aggression. "Crockett won the battle of facts and ideas," said one commentator. But Lake's supporters see her as a voice for the voiceless, and that's something that can't be easily dismissed. On MSNBC, Rachel Maddow hosted a segment with experts, breaking down the broader themes of the debate. What we witnessed last night was a clash of ideologies. One side represents hope, unity, and thoughtful reform. The other is about destruction, chaos, and scapegoating. Crockett's calmness was not just her strength, it was her weapon, Maddow concluded, echoing sentiments shared by many who had watched the debate. Meanwhile, conservative pundits pushed back. Lake was right to call out the system's failures, one analyst said on Fox News. Crockett's polished arguments are no match for the urgent, real-world issues we face. People are tired of waiting for change, they want action, not platitudes. Even celebrities got involved. On Twitter, actors, musicians, and influencers shared their reactions. "Jasmine Crockett is the kind of leader we need right now," tweeted singer John Legend. "Her integrity and strength are a beacon of hope." Actress Kerry Washington chimed in, calling Crockett's composure powerful and inspiring. On the other side, conservative voices in Hollywood expressed their admiration for Lake's unyielding stance. "Lake's fire and passion are exactly what we need in a leader," said actor James Woods. "She's not afraid to take on the establishment, and that's exactly why we love her." The debate extended beyond the talking heads of television and Twitter. In living rooms across the nation, families were debating the fallout. The conversation went beyond politics, it was about the future of the country, about the direction America would take after such a momentous confrontation. Friends and co-workers found themselves arguing about who had really won, the fiery advocate for change, or the calm, reasoned voice of unity. On the streets of Washington, D.C., in coffee shops and at bars, people continued to discuss what had transpired. "It's clear Crockett won," a woman said at a downtown cafe. "She didn't just win the argument, she won the respect of everyone watching." But not everyone was convinced. "Lake may have been aggressive," a man countered in a heated discussion with friends. "But she spoke the truth. The system is broken, and Crockett's approach will never fix it. She's all talk, no action." The confrontation had become a national event, a mirror for the political divide that had taken root in America. But it was more than just a debate between two politicians. It was a reflection of the larger battle for the future of the country, destruction versus rebuilding, chaos versus unity, anger versus calm. In the end, it was clear that the debate wasn't over. It had only just begun. What had started as a single confrontation had sparked a firestorm, one that would continue to rage across the political landscape for weeks to come. As the dust settled from the debate and the fallout continued to echo through the nation, Jasmine Crockett found herself standing at the heart of a moment far bigger than just a political victory. The cameras had long since turned off, the microphones were quiet, but the words she had spoken were still reverberating, not just through the media, but through the hearts of countless Americans who had watched. In the days following the confrontation, Jasmine sat down with her team in the quiet of her office, reflecting on the weight of what had just occurred. It wasn't just the final blow she had struck against Kari Lake, though that would go down in history as one of the most defining moments of the election cycle. No, it was the clarity she had found in that moment, the realization that her fight wasn't just about winning a debate or defeating an opponent. It was about something far greater. She thought about the values that had brought her to this point, the values that had guided every step of her journey. Justice, dignity, truth. These weren't just words to her, they were the foundation upon which everything she had done was built. And in the face of all the noise, all the division, and all the hatred, these values had become her strength, her anchor. The country was divided. It had been for years, and it seemed to be growing even more fractured. Kari Lake, with her sharp words and fiery passion, had sought to tear down the system, to dismantle the very foundations of what America stood for. And while Lake's words had resonated with some, it had become clear that the way forward couldn't be through destruction, through chaos, or through fear. Jasmine knew that true leadership didn't come from stoking division. It came from bringing people together, people from every walk of life, every race, every creed, who shared a common belief in the potential for something better. She knew that the fight for justice wasn't just about opposing the wrongs of the world, it was about creating the world as it should be. It was about embracing the values that made America what it was meant to be, a land of opportunity, equality, and freedom for all. But more than that, it was about humility. It was about recognizing that no one person, no matter how much they believed in their own righteousness, could ever have all the answers. Leadership, true leadership, was about listening, learning, and, above all, respecting others. It was about accepting that the solutions to the nation's problems couldn't come from one voice shouting louder than the rest, it had to come from a collective effort, a shared understanding of what justice and fairness meant. As she sat there, looking out the window at the bustling city streets below, Jasmine realized something profound. This moment wasn't just about defeating Kari Lake, it was about reaffirming the ideals that had always bound Americans together. In the face of extremism and anger, she had stayed true to the principles of empathy, understanding, and respect. It wasn't just her intellect that had won the debate, it was her character, her ability to stay grounded in the belief that no matter how difficult the fight, the right thing to do was always the thing that brought people together. Jasmine had spoken truth to power, but she had done so with grace and humility. She had reminded the nation that justice wasn't about tearing others down, it was about lifting people up. And that was the message that would echo far beyond the debate stage. Looking at the outpouring of support from across the country, the messages of hope, the calls for unity, the people who had been inspired to take action, Jasmine felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't the end of the battle, it was just the beginning. The moment she had won on that stage was just one victory in a much larger struggle, a struggle to ensure that the principles of justice, dignity, and truth were upheld for everyone, regardless of their background or political leanings. As she prepared to speak to the nation in the coming days, Jasmine knew that her words would not just be for her supporters, but for everyone who believed in the power of truth and integrity. She would continue to fight, not with anger, not with fear, but with the certainty that the ideals of fairness and justice were worth fighting for, every single day. And so, as the camera lights would soon shine on her again, this time in a more reflective light, Jasmine would speak not just of victory, but of the future. She would speak of a vision for a nation that was built on respect, on kindness, and on the unwavering belief that justice for one is justice for all. And in that vision, there was hope. There was unity. There was the promise of a better tomorrow. For Jasmine, the true victory had always been in the fight for something greater than herself. It had always been about standing firm in the face of adversity, about staying true to the values that made this country great, about showing the world that, even in the darkest of times, dignity and truth would always prevail. This moment was not just a debate victory, it was a reaffirmation of the very ideals that bound America together. As the dust settles and the echoes of this historic confrontation fade, one thing remains clear: justice, dignity, and truth always triumph over arrogance. Jasmine Crockett stood strong against the divisive forces that threatened to tear the nation apart. In the face of fiery aggression, she chose to lead with calm, to speak with integrity, and to stand firm in the values that truly matter, values that have the power to unite, to heal, and to rebuild what has been broken. This moment wasn't just a political victory, it was a victory for all of us who believe in the power of truth and justice. It was a reminder that no matter how loud the noise gets, no matter how fierce the opposition, standing firm in what is right will always prevail. The fight for a better future isn't just about winning a battle, it's about shaping a nation with dignity and respect for all. Now, it's your turn to take action. If you believe in what Jasmine Crockett stood for, if you believe in justice, fairness, and the power of truth, then join this movement. Share this video with your friends, your family, your community. Let's spread the message that we can do better, that we can be better. Together, we can create the change this country desperately needs. Don't forget to subscribe for more content that inspires, educates, and empowers. Share this story, share this truth. The future is in our hands, and it's time we stand up for what's right. The journey is just beginning, will you be part of it?